My name is Mike Thompson. I'm an illustrator and a sculptor. I have been um, working in the entertainment field for probably the past 20, 30 years. Um, I'm an old dude now, but no, I've been doing this for a long time. I actually started with the t-shirt industry back in 92. So since then, I've done work for companies like Coca-Cola, um, Marvel, recently Sideshow, Nike, a whole bunch of different people. But uh, let me get this presentation rolling here. Sorry. All right, cool. Yeah. So here is some of the stuff that I've done. And It's so tiny. I was hoping that I would have a big screen here. This is a teeny tiny postage stamp, but okay. Anyway, is what it is. Yeah. So lately I've been doing some digital sculpting. I've done work for a company called Sideshow Collectibles. They make statues for everything from Marvel to DC Comics to movie franchises. Vincent mentioned the Wu-Tang Clan. That's a new deal. I just did a print and a statue for the anniversary of Old Dirty Bastard recently, and did this piece for Marvel for Civil War. This was a concept piece that was when the movie was about to come out, and actually that kind of explains why the teams are kind of shuffled around. I get that a lot. Like, why is Ant-Man with Iron Man, and I think he's supposed to be over on Cap's shoulder. But this was back when the movie was still kind of being fleshed out, and so what they did was they sent me a whole bunch of set photos and actors' pictures and things of that nature, and I had to turn it into a piece of concept art that could be used for the film. Done some work for Nike. This was summer before last, I believe, and this is all done in Photoshop. When I began as an illustrator, I was doing a lot of airbrush work, and mostly it was on fabrics. Back in the day, I would do paintings on T-shirts and jean jackets and things like that. So this piece was kind of it was really fun to do because they wanted a style that um, looked very much like airbrush. And so, if we were to zoom in on it, you can see that that's kind of the look that I got with this one. Also done work with Warner Brothers. So these pieces that you're looking at right here were painted for the first three were painted for the DC Infinite Earths collection, which is action figures. And so I do box art a lot of times, a lot of package design. And so they would tell me we need poison ivy. And so I had to come up with this piece, and then they put that on the box, and that's what is sold at retail. And something that's a little different is this piece on the end here. That was done for a Lego Justice League movie, um, and that's like on demand now, and on DVDs and things like that. But that was kind of outside of my comfort zone, but it was fun to do because I mean, who doesn't love Legos? Right. And here's some more Marvel stuff. People ask me all the time, how do I get these clients? For this particular job, what I did was I had to do pretty much like a test job for them. And the first property that I worked for with Marvel was Guardians of the Galaxy. And so I did this Rocket Raccoon, which is more comic accurate than he was in the movies. And that got me the attention of the studio I was working with, and they brought me on to work on pieces from the film that were used on like cups from Taco Bell and toys and big super soakers and things like that in Toys R Us. So it's a fun job. The Black Panther piece here was done as a test that got me the work for Civil War. So this was when Chadwick Boseman was first announced as the actor that was going to play Black Panther. It's when they first kind of showed his suit, and so they gave me, early pictures of this, and I had to, this is before there were all those different angles, so I had basically like one shot, and I had to figure out how to wrap this intricate texture around his legs and arms and all that stuff. So that's that piece. Also done work for movies. So Dimension Films is a big client of mine, and movies like First Sunday and Book of Henry and Youth in Revolt are all pieces that I've painted different styles. If we look at these, there are some of these that are more done in the style of the old exploitation posters from the 70s and 80s. Slide back. This Book of Henry piece here and the Michael Cera are more airbrush style. And this is kind of the way that I would do things back when I used to cut masking film before I was working on a computer and lay things down, and then like kind of meticulously paint each part one at a time. So, with the advent of painting on, computers and having screens and everything that you could paint right on, it just made my life a lot easier and faster. And so I'm able to turn work much quicker. And here's another client, Upper Deck cards. So I used to collect these when I was young. I used to love getting the Marvel cards. And so this was kind of one of those bucket list jobs that didn't pay a ton of money, but when they told me I could paint Spider-Man and the X-Men and Venom, like, how am I going to turn that down? You can't, is the answer to that. So I did it. I was always a big fan of hip hop music. And so, when I was attending University of Maryland, I would walk around campus with my Walkman and listening to, Public Enemy on my headphones. And so I used to love listening to these guys, and I always wanted to paint them. So when I got a job where I could actually do work with the artists who I love listening to, it was a dream job. So I've done a lot of pieces with hip hop artists. This was for a Coca-Cola commercial, which I was actually in, and they had me come out to New York, and I got to hang out with the Roots and Angie Stone, Music Soul Child, and film in a loft until like 2 a.m. in the morning and drink way too much Coke. So that's that piece. This is a piece that was painted in Photoshop, but again, it's made to look like it is hand painted. That's one of the things about the way that I work with illustration, is that I never want my stuff to look digital. I always want it to feel like it was done by hand, because I think that too many people look at a piece that's done on a computer and they think you're just running a filter, you're pressing a button. And that's kind of a shame. I see the computer as basically just another tool, like an airbrush or a pen or markers or something like that, just another tool that allows you to get your creativity out into the world. So this piece was done for a giant compendium hip hop book. It was a photo essay book, and this is the only piece of artwork that was in it. And when it was a gatefold, which means it folds out to 4 pages. And when it's completely folded out, it's actually about 4.5 feet wide. So it's a really big book, super heavy. But this is a piece that I called the 4 Elements of Hip Hop. We have the spray painter, the break dancer, the DJ, and the MC. And one of the things that I also kind of enjoy doing is taking graphic elements and tying them through my paintings, whether it be color or just the certain aesthetic. And with this one, I wanted to have an orange element that just kind of ran through and pulled your eye from the left part of the piece all the way to the right part. And And that's kind of what I did with this one. And then finally, like with this, this final piece here, this is kind of the jump off for me. When I was working with a company called Echo Unlimited, I was the head of their t-shirt department. So I worked on, making t-shirts with either sayings or logos, graphic tees, what have you. And that was my foray into art straight out of college. I used to do t-shirts for companies. With this company, they decided that they were going to do a line of advertisements where they actually brought in the hip hop artists, and I would meet them, and then I would do these paintings of them, and they'd have them in the clothing, right? So the Method Man in the middle is from that. I did a series of pieces for, fallen rappers, and Big Pun and Biggie were a couple of the ones that were really influential to me. So I painted them in addition to like Tupac and a whole bunch of other people. So before I get into the process, does anybody have any questions about anything?
Yeah. So Rakshan wants to know, when working with the cinema industry, did you ever have to sign confidentiality agreements because you had to access to certain information / photos that weren't out yet?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most of my work is NDA. Everything that I do is under a non-disclosure agreement. And actually that I got in trouble with that Black Panther piece because I had signed an NDA with Marvel to do the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then when Civil War came out, they asked me to do the Black Panther test piece because it was a test and wasn't going to be used in anything. And they announced the suit and the actor. I think I posted a picture of just like his glove on my Instagram, and and they sent me a brand new fresh NDA that was like 40 pages thick, that basically everything that I ever do in perpetuity has to be on the down low. So, but yeah, for movies, that's the way it is. For these pieces I just finished for Sideshow, I just did another couple pieces that I can't talk about. Most of what I do, I can't talk about until way after people lose interest. But yeah, that's the answer.
And Jade wants to know, who was your favorite client or favorite piece that you've worked on to date?
That's a tough one. So I have enjoyed, I've enjoyed a lot of these pieces. There's only been a couple pieces I haven't liked. I think it's easier to pick out stuff that I didn't like than I did. But my favorite is probably the Coke piece, because I got to be in a commercial. I mean, how cool is that? I did something like that for Infinity Motors too, where they let me drive a car and I had to paint a piece inspired by like the Q45. So those two were really fun. But I'd have to say now my favorite client is Sideshow, because I've painted all my life. I've always been kind of a closet sculptor where I really wanted to sculpt, and I collect these action figures and statues. And if you were to look at my office, I have statues everywhere of like every superhero, and I've always been a big fanboy forever. So so now that I can sculpt actual statues of these heroes and movie characters and stuff, that's probably my favorite thing so far.
Yeah, indeed. You definitely have a really cool background behind you right now.
Oh, you can see this. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So, was there anything else before I move on to the process? I will take that as all right, cool. So basically, people ask me what's the process that I use. And now what I do is I incorporate, sometimes I incorporate 3D into my 2D work, which is great. That's kind of how I got into using a program called ZBrush. And that's something that it's a digital sculpting app and it allows you to create these, these 3D statues and stuff. So piece I had to work on was for a, is this the one? This is an example of one that I did for this old show called Battle of the Planets, and it's called Gatchaman in Japan. But it's basically these teenage kids that were space superheroes, and so I made what's considered a brief, which is basically a bunch of pictures, which are inspiration for what I'm going to do. I have this little dude that you can pose, so I figured out, I posed him and figured out what I wanted the pose to look like, and then did a sketch of the character. And then once that was done, I started figuring out like a really rough sketch of him. So took my base mesh and kind of made the clothes to look like the dude and got him in the basic pose. The girl on the left is something that's kind of taken to the final stage. And then here you can see I'm starting to detail the boy a little more. And then here's the final. Well, no, it's not the final. It's almost the final. So then after that, I continue to detail, working on anatomy, making sure that it looks like it's a guy that's wearing these clothes instead of, just somebody who has, the clothes painted on them or something like that. My big thing about these superheroes and my approach to these is I want everything to feel really realistic, and I want them to feel like they're people inside of the suits. So, and that's done. This is basically what the final looks like. So if I was to zoom in, you can see all the detail, right? Now I'd take this piece and go to a painting of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to do a piece several years ago. I had this idea first, by the way. If there are any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans out there who are any comic book nerds, they have stolen my idea. But I had this idea for a character called the Last Ninja, or the Last Turtle, rather. And so it was Michelangelo and all his brothers got killed. And so he has all their weapons, and he's got like a tattoo on his arm of all his brothers and everything. But I sculpted it, not a whole lot of detail on him, but then I painted over it, and you can see that there's quite a bit more detail that I was able to paint than sculpt. So here's just another example of that. This is back when Deadpool first came out, so I gave him a little Deadpool keychain on his katana and put April, who's the reporter, I guess is his girlfriend, so he has like a little prison tattoo of her on the arm, and he's a hip hop fan, so I think I have a button on there that says I love hip hop because I love hip hop also. And then this is that tattoo I was telling you guys about. With all found materials, right? I want him to have like this sense of armor, but it's basically pieces of wood that he found and drove nails through and then bungeed to his arm. So I like kind of thinking through the making things practical, right? So that's what all of this stuff would be, something that actually could exist. And so that was mine. He's got this gnarly scar on his chest because everybody knows Michelangelo is, he's always joking around until his brothers get killed and he gets a big nasty scar on his chest and then he takes it for real, right? So that's that. Here's another example really quickly of the process, and then I'm going to get into showing you some stuff in Photoshop, take some more questions. But I had to do the cover of a piece of painting software for a company called Corel. They make software called Corel Painter, and I'm one of their painter masters, which basically is a really kind of silly name for somebody who uses the product and promotes their product. But I wanted to do this thing where there's a girl who is running. She has like these cybernetic kind of elements. So it's interesting that This was, I don't know, maybe like 7, 8 years ago. And now there's a game that's coming out called Cyberpunk that has these kind of things in it that look way cooler than mine. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to have her running, and she has maybe a robot arm, and she's running so fast that she's kind of turning into paint, and there's a trail of paint that's coming off her. So I found these reference images. Where's the final piece? Oh, Word. Okay. The final piece isn't in here. All right, let me show it to you real quick, because that would be a bummer. It's anticlimactic. Let's hide this and come over here real quick. I have it. But if there are any questions while I'm getting this, let me know.
Yeah. So Jason wants to know, what is your favorite art medium?
Favorite is, I mean, I like painting with acrylics a lot. If we're talking about, going analog, it's going to be acrylics, and then painting digitally is like, I do that every day. So I love that a lot too.
Jasmine wants to know, what are some programs you would recommend to amateur artists who are testing out digital art, painting/drawing?
Okay, so for painting, there's a lot of really good open source programs that you can use. If you're on a PC, there's one called Krita, I think, Krita, that's really nice. There's also Procreate. I don't know that Procreate is free, but I think it's pretty cheap. I mean, there's a lot of really, I would just Google free painting apps or cheap apps, and there's a lot of really, really good ones. And if you want to sculpt, also there's some pretty cheap ones that you can do on an iPad, so you don't necessarily have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to be up and running. You can pretty much mess around on your iPad and get some cheap apps. All right, I found that piece I was telling you about. I need to share my other screen. So let's flip this over. Hold on one second. Display to. All right, cool. Can you guys see this? All right, this is, oops, wait a minute. Maybe not. Hold on a sec. There you go. Okay. So this is that final piece that I was telling you about. And if I move myself out of the way, this is the end result of taking the way I normally work, which is I'll go and comb the internet, find a bunch of pictures, build a mood board, and use that for reference, and then paint the thing that I want to paint. So this is what was used on the cover of the box or the box art rather, for Corel Painter 2016, I think, something like that. Yeah, so there's that. While I have this open and I'm in Photoshop, is a nice way to kind of dovetail into the little introduction. But here's a couple more pieces. This was done for the Key and Peele movie Keanu with the gangster kitten and Method Man. This is for Netflix, Luke Cage. This piece here is for Hidden Figures, and this one actually won a Clio Award, which is kind of like an Oscar, but for advertising. And then I also got one for a Deadpool piece where my daughter modeled her fingernails, and they put it on a billboard, and I got a Clio for that too, which is pretty cool. This is Wrinkle in Time, Bumblebee, and this is that 4 Elements piece again. So if you have any other questions, let's do them, and then I'll get into kind of showing you around the interface of Photoshop and some of the brushes.
So Orvin wants to know, when and how did you get your big break in the industry?
I think so. The big break happened when I got a call. It was a couple breaks. One was a pretty interesting story where I was at a McDonald's drive-through with my family, and I was getting dinner, and I got a call from someone about the first version of this piece. Actually, there was like a MC and DJ contest that was going on in DC, and my piece was displayed there. And I got a call from someone who told me that they were Kanye West's manager, and they wanted to know if I would speak to him on the phone. And this was when College Dropout had just come out. So I thought it was one of my friends messing with me, and I was like, "Yeah, put him on the phone." And so I'm expecting one of my friends to say something, and it's Kanye West on the phone, and he was just like, I at this thing, I just saw your artwork. I'm a big art fan, and I want to know if you can do a piece for my Jesus Walks video. I was like, yeah. So met up with him, and we kind of talked about what he wanted to do. And I painted a piece that's featured at the end. If you go back and watch the Jesus Walks video from College Dropout, the very end of it, there's like a lightning flash, and then they show this piece of artwork that's supposed to look like it's painted on, the top of the Sistine Chapel. And it's on for a split second. They cut it short, but he liked it enough for me to kind of spark up make a relationship with him, and kind of build that over the years. So that was like the first big, I guess, hip hop acknowledgement. And then I think the Coca-Cola thing was the first real big break, because I was just doing T-shirts and ads for the clothing at Echo in a basement in South River, New Jersey, for a few years. Wasn't making a whole lot of money, and really just was. I mean, it was fun, but it was all right. And I had aspirations for more. I wanted to be in the advertising art industry, and so when I got a call to do the Coke thing, it was big. Like, that was a big deal, and I got to meet a bunch of movers and shakers. Excuse me, and that was a big client. Like, Coca-Cola is a blue chip client, so having that gave me the incentive to leave and work for myself. That was back in 2004, and I've been a freelancer ever since then. So for a number of years now, I've been on my own, and I've been getting more and more clients. But having Coke as the first really big one was the one that got me everybody else. So yeah, that's it.
I feel like Kanye would be the bigger one.
Which one?
Kanye West.
Oh yeah, well, Kanye was that was a good one, but yeah, Coke has deep pockets, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Giles wants to know if you use for when you use Photoshop, do you use it on a touchscreen device, or do you use a stylus or something like that?
Yeah. So what I'm using Photoshop on is my my Cintiq screen here, which you guys can't see it, but I have a 32-inch screen that I paint on. So, like, here's my stylus, and I'm right here, and I can paint on the entire thing. It's touch sensitive, and it's got like a ridiculous amount of levels of sensitivity. So painting on this is pretty much better than painting, in real life for me.
Okay. George wants to know, how long did it take you to finish your longest project?
So the longest project for me was probably a piece I did for EA Sports. There was a video game cover for a game called NFL Street 2, and it had Jeremy Shockey and Exhibit on it. And it wasn't because it was so intricate. It was because I couldn't get an approval for it. It took forever to get an approval because they wanted Jeremy to be really angry and looking like down at the camera. And what they gave me were photos of him and his girlfriend in exhibit on a couch playing the game. And they're all happy and smiling, and he's looking every direction but the direction they want. So I had to keep making up his face over and over and over again. So for that piece, I think I did, I'm not even lying, I think I did almost 20 versions of his face. And it took me, that one job probably took me almost a whole year before I got paid. And while I was working on that, I couldn't work on anything else. So that caused a lot of problems in my house. But yeah, that was the longest. That was the longest job. That was a nightmare job. But they accepted it. They loved it at the end. I don't show it because I couldn't stand that piece myself. But yeah, that was the longest piece.
The real wants to know, do you recommend always starting with the story? Like when you did Michelangelo in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Does it help? Love that one, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I think so. So like I try to kind of dig into whatever it is. So if it's, you know, the story on that piece was pretty organic because I always loved the show and the comic book. And for me, like Michelangelo was always kind of just messing around. And I was like, what would it take to make this guy be serious and be like a badass? And that's like slaughtering all his brothers was a pretty good one. So I was like, hey, let me do this thing. The ironic thing is now they've just made the comic book. It's called The Last Ronin, and I don't think it's Michelangelo. I think it's one of the other guys, but same thing. All his brothers are killed, and he's like the last dude. But yeah, that story made sense. Most of the time, I'm getting a brief from clients. So like everything I do, pretty much 90% of what I do is for a client. So what they'll do is they'll give me a brief, and that will say, hey, we're working on this, we're working on the new Ghostbusters movie, and it's got the Stranger Things kids in it, and it's got this, and we want you to make it look like this thing. And they'll give me, sometimes they'll give me reference for photos. Sometimes I have to find it myself. But I found that working that way is great for me because if I'm left to my own devices, I'll keep noodling at something until it doesn't make sense anymore. I'll either get tired of it or I'll completely run out of time. And so having something in front of me, it's like an outline, right? When you're writing a story, you have an outline in front of you and it helps you to figure it out. So it makes sense for me.
So Deb wants to know, what is your advice for protecting your copyright for your artwork on the internet?
That's a hard one. I would say for me, the only thing that's worked is do stuff for clients that have better lawyers than you. So I say that because I did a piece for Warner Brothers of Heath Ledger as the Joker from The Dark Knight, and I looked online and it was just everywhere. Somebody had taken it and was selling it as like phone wallpapers and screensavers and everything you can imagine. And somebody actually sent me a thing. It was like, hey, Mike, isn't this your work? And I noticed it was. And, the only thing that got the guy who was doing all that to take it down is basically he was shamed. All of my Facebook friends and Twitter friends and stuff like that just went hard on this guy on his store site and said, you stole this piece. Here's the original artwork. You're wrong. And he took it down. But normally it's one of those things where it's very difficult to protect your IP, especially if it's online. So you got to keep things close to the vest. Definitely, if you're going to produce something, you should probably get it trademarked or copywritten before you share it with anybody. Like watermarks don't even do it anymore. People just take those. And I had my signature on, he's holding a playing card and it has Thompson on there. And everything on there, it had Thompson on the playing card. I'm like, dude, this is my name right on the piece right now. So yeah, that's a tough one.
I actually had a question. So what was the reason why you were only allowed to work on that one piece for a whole year? Like, why couldn't you pick up other work?
Because the schedule that I had on that one didn't change. So the way that they originally approached me was, where we want you to work on this video game. This is the deadline. Here are the landmarks we want you to hit as far as when to turn in things like sketches and a comp and this, that, and the other. And I did all that, and it was a committee. So it wasn't like it was one art director, creative director that signed off on it. It went up and down the chain where you had everybody from people in the creative department to big wigs at EA to salespeople chiming in, and that became a recipe for disaster. So basically, when there's too many chefs in the kitchen, it just gets really terrible. And they just had me in limbo. They're like, yeah, okay. Friday would come along, and they'd be like, all right, we're gonna show this to our people, and we'll get back to you on Monday. And then Monday would come, and Tuesday would come, and Wednesday would come. And if I was to take a job, they would always hit me back, like right when I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do something else. And they would be like, all right, well, we want you to go in and change this thing, this one thing. And so the job itself didn't take a year, but it went well past the date that they asked me to do it. And then it took forever to get paid. So the thing about being an illustrator, a freelancer, is that it's one of those things that's feast or famine. And I had years, especially when I was starting off and looking to build up clients that were very they were precarious. I would have sometimes where I didn't have work for long stretches of time, and I had to learn that you always are looking, even when you're working, you're always looking for that next thing. So now I kind of have it set up where I don't really get a whole lot of free time anymore. But if I do, I'm working on things like, making my website better or promoting or something that's going to be in the service to get me more work. So
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
I feel like EA is always suspect of a lot of bad things.
Oh, they're real bad. Yeah. That was right before the big lawsuit came out where the wives were suing EA for their spouses not coming home. It was like I think it started off with the wives, and then just employees in general just got really upset with their work ethic. They're just working people to the bone. But yeah, so I'm going to show you guys some stuff here. Let me see if there's anything else that maybe might be interesting. I think that's it. All right, cool. So let's get into some Photoshop stuff real quick. And if you guys have questions, just ask while I'm doing it. But I'll just get a new page here. And this is very basic. So I need more water. Sorry, I had a 3-hour stream today, so I've been talking all day long. So when I first started using Photoshop, I was very, very overwhelmed. And I almost gave it up immediately because it was just so much to take in, I didn't get it. And this is before you could hop on YouTube and look at how do you do this thing. So I didn't really know, but I mean, now we're in a fantastic time because there's nothing you can't just, within 2 or 3 clicks, figure out how to do. But that being said, so the interface is pretty straightforward. On your left-hand side, you have your toolbar that, sorry, I need more water. Maybe if I can get the mic closer, I don't have to talk as loud. Yeah, so you have your navigation tools up top here and marquee select. With me, what I first kind of honed in on is the brush tool. And with Photoshop, I noticed there's a lot of people who use these specialized brushes, custom brushes to get looks. For me, mostly what I'm using is just the hard edge round brush and the soft edge brush. So you turn down the smoothing here and come over to, let's go to the painting setup. This little icon over here allows you to change your setup from like photography to painting to whatever. And so with painting here, I have my layer, and I always like to usually make a new layer when I'm working on something. I might take, one thing I hate is painting on a white background. So I might do like a gradient fill. I'm just clicking on these swatches and my color picker pops up here. But there's a gradient fill here, and I might just do something on the background like do a gradient and then paint on a layer above it. Right? Depending upon whatever I'm painting, it would make sense for that color to work out that way. But on my brushes, I can do things like change the dynamic of them. So I can have it pressure sensitive, which is great for me because I'm using a tablet that is, wow, my whole face turned red. That's crazy. Let me make this a neutral color here. Just turn down saturation. But yeah, what I can do is I can, the harder I press, let's turn up actually the flow. Let's turn this up. And the opacity, let's turn this up at the top here. And then if I was to do a stroke, the harder I press, the harder or the wider the stroke is. And then the lighter I press, the lighter it gets, the thinner it gets rather, right? So that's that. That's really great for doing your line work. So if I'm working on something that, you know, I need to, nailed it, self-portrait, y'all. What you know about it? So now if I wanted to fill this in, what I could do is I could come over here and make a layer, put it below the line, and then turn off that thickness, the pressure sensitivity for the thickness. And what I can do at this point is I can come over and select color and fill this in. Right, this very orange, and so that's how I would start. Everything for me starts as a mid-tone. So for this, if I was being like serious about it, that color would be a little more desaturated, and it might be, let's see, a little more desaturated. And maybe it might be around here, right? Like a mid-tone. And then I can go in now and I can paint my shadows and I can paint my highlights. So at that point, I can make a new layer. Maybe for this one, I'll use a softer edge brush. So you can change your hardness and softness in the brush itself here. You can also change it up here. There is a, next to opacity and flow, if you click on the brush itself, there's a hardness setting and a size setting. So that's there, right? So now what I could do is I can, and this is kind of how I show my kids how to paint, is rather than going and you can do it one or two ways, right? I could go and make a mask by selecting the outer edge like this. And then with that selection, now I can grab my brush and grab a darker color, and I can start to kind of shade this, right? That way. Or what I can do if I'm in a hurry, which is always for me, is I can, rather than making these maybe, you know, hundreds of masks, when I was working on this piece, when I was working on this piece, it was crazy because everything here had to be masked and painted. So, I mean, look at it, it's a lot of stuff, right? So this piece took a long time. But if I'm on something like this and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, I don't want to commit a lot of time to this, what I can do is I can not have selection and just start painting, right? Just like freehand. And then maybe what I'm doing to select colors too, by the way, is I'm holding down the Option key or the Alt key on a PC, Option on a Mac. And then if I select the color, what I'll usually do if I want to do blends is I'll have a dark color and a light color, and then where those two meet, I'll do a eyedropper, which is basically picking up the color right there, and then I can paint. And so I can get these really nice smooth transitions really quickly, right? So that's that. Now, if I wanted to paint without the mask, like I was showing you before, I can just go and paint it in really quickly like this. And then I can take this layer and make what's called a layer mask. And with that layer mask, now what I can do is I can maybe go to a hard edge brush, set to black. And everywhere I paint black is going to erase because I'm on the mask layer, right? But the reason I like doing it this way so much is because it's non-destructive, which basically means with this mask, if I turn it off, I didn't lose anything. I didn't actually erase anything. So I can do it really quickly. And if I turn it back on, you can see that I went too far here. I went inside the line. If I had erased it, then that would have been, I'd have to paint that part back again and it would take forever. But now, since it's on a mask, all I have to do is just switch that to white and I can come back and I can clean it up, right? And all I'm doing is I'm adding that color back to the picture. It was always there, I just had it masked. So that's how I could do that. I can do that for all my layers. So, and in fact, the thing that's pretty cool about Photoshop is I can actually select multiple layers by holding down Shift. And then that gets like all three of these layers here. And then I can group them. There's a little folder icon down here. If I group it, now they're all in one folder. I can turn them off and turn them on. Let's say I want to clean up all this stuff that's outside of my lines. I can make a layer mask for the folder. And now what I can do is I can go in and I can erase anything outside of the line all at one time. Doesn't matter what layer it's on. And you can see I'm doing it quickly and I'm going maybe a little too far. Like if I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, no, I just ruined hours of work. Not really, because I'm on a mask. So what I can do is I can switch that back to white and I can paint it back because it's just a mask. That's invaluable for me. It's one of the best things about Photoshop and I use it all the time. It allows me to paint things really, really quickly. So if we look at the, if we look at this Luke Cage piece, This was done in Corel Painter, but same type of a deal. I would paint. I didn't have to worry about making masks. I would like just paint the way I would paint in real life. If it went outside the lines, it didn't really matter to me, because what I could do is I could go in and, just paint away the areas that I didn't want to be outside the lines. And it was great because I could do him on one layer. This background with the Apollo and everything is on its own layer. And that's another great thing about digital painting, is that you can have multiple layers, and it allows you to take chances and experiment. This hidden figures piece, all of this stuff in their hair here. So if you haven't watched this movie, do yourselves a favor and watch this movie. It's amazing. It's about three Black women who basically were part of the beginnings of the NASA space program. They're mathematicians and scientists and blah, blah, blah. But it was a great movie. So what they had me do was go in and take vignettes from the film. They had all these little scenes from the film, and figure out how to make it inside of, their hair, and make this interesting thing. So each one of these areas is its own layer, because I didn't want to take a chance on messing up, the piece as a whole. So I would just make a layer, paint the NASA building, make another layer, paint the police and the dog, make another layer, and paint the library, whatever. And then do the main characters. So it's a great thing, as far as experimentation goes. And you can see the thing about my work is, if you look at it the way that you guys are looking at it, which is like this big, it looks amazing, right? If you zoom in on it, it's just like, there's just crazy strokes. Like I'm a big proponent of the scribble scrabble theory, which is I just lay down random strokes, and I don't care if they're not necessarily clean, because unless this is going to be on a billboard, nobody's going to see it. Like they're going to see that, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, she took forever to paint this thing. No, I didn't. I was just laying down crazy strokes, and I got it to look the way I want it to. There's parts of this that still look sketchy, but you don't see it because you're looking at it this big. And that is how I won a Clio, you guys. Anyway, let's get back to Photoshop. My amazing piece of art here. So yeah, so once we have this done and it's on its own layer, I'll continue to make layers. But you got to be careful with Photoshop, because you can make hundreds and hundreds of layers. And then you have to go through and figure out what's what. So it's always a good idea to label what you're working on. So I would have this as fill, right? So that's the fill for my thing. Always label your line work, because what I do 9 times out of 10 is I will start painting and realize I'm painting on the line layer. For something like this, not a big deal. But if it is something like this piece, it's a problem, right? So this was for X-Men Apocalypse. Okay, movie, but cool to paint. So with this one, I had my line of all of the characters, and I think with Magneto, I accidentally started painting on the line, and then I had to go in and change his suit, and I was kind of screwed. So always label your stuff, and then it'll save you time in the end. So anyway, I told you about the midtones and the shadows. So then after that's done, I would go in and make another layer, and then I would start doing my highlights, right? So I always start off by eye dropping the mid value, and then I'll go and find something that complements, but it's a little lighter. And now what I can do is I can go in and start to, work on a highlight. right? And that's what all these pieces are. This process that I'm showing you is the way that I paint. So all those things that you saw in the slideshow and the movie posters and ODB and all that stuff, that's all done on a larger scale of the exact process that I'm showing you now. So anyway, that's the brushes. For me, most of the time, you'll notice that I have hard edge strokes. If we look at this hidden figures piece again, these are all hard edge brush strokes. If we were to look at something like the Wrinkle in Time, these are soft edge. So two brushes. One is soft edge, one is hard edge. I don't use a whole bunch of brushes, but the soft is going to give me a look like airbrush. And that's, you know, sometimes that's amazing and it's perfect. Other times it's too clean, it's too sterile. Sometimes it looks like it's you know, it doesn't have a whole lot of soul to it. Whereas if you were to look at you know, something like the Keanu piece, the strokes make it for me, right? So if we get in close on Jordan Peele's face, you can see strokes everywhere, right? Those are all hard strokes. And basically because one of my all-time heroes as an illustrator is named Drew Struzan. He is he's a painter who's done album covers, but he's most famous for movie posters, all the great ones, Star Wars, E.T., Indiana Jones, up to current Walking Dead, whatever. He's done it all. So that's who I kind of patterned this style after. And you can see all the strokes are there. It's messy, but it just has a lot more soul to it to me than something that's super, super soft. Right. So it's 9 o'clock now. Were there any other questions about anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would your dream like job be? Like dream illustration? Dream client?
For a client or just something that I'm doing as a living?
I guess like both. Like if you had all the money in the world, if you had all like the backing in the world, like what kind of project would you do?
I mean, I have like bucket list jobs. I think I would mind doing something for, well, back in the day, I wouldn't mind doing something for Star Wars. It's gotten a little hectic lately, but I would love to do something like I look at the beginning of Mandalorian and those pieces look like they're painted. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if it's an effect they're running over top of scenes or if it's a concept art that they use to film those scenes. I'm thinking it's probably concept art, but something like that would be cool. Like a really high profile thing on a project like Star Wars would be dope. I'm a big sci-fi head and I love Marvel movies and comic books. So either one of those things, I think I've already had the dream jobs, you know, and as far as like occupation, I'm doing it, you know, as long as I stay busy, this is the best job in the world. You know, it's never the same. I could be working on a movie poster one day and Green Lantern for Cartoon Network the next day, and you know, Miles Morales for a video game the next day. Um, I'm all over the place, but the great thing about it is I'm working for myself and I get to express my creativity. And I'm at a point now in my career where people don't really second guess what they want from me. They're just like, we like this piece and we like this style. Give us something like that. And so that's a great place to be when you don't have somebody that's micromanaging you. That's amazing. You know, it took 30 years to get here, but you know, now it's a pretty sweet gig. Anything else?
Well, if no one else has any other questions, thank you, Mike, so much for coming in, being our final guest speaker of the semester. Let's give it up one more time for Mike. Like, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I love the Michelangelo, especially like the scar down his chest. I thought that was so cool. But yeah, so follow Mike on all platforms, like his YouTube, his Instagram. See some really cool artwork. Follow him, get some more tutorials. I think, Mike, you're also teaching some classes, right? Online?
Yeah. So I'm teaching with a school called CG Spectrum, and I teach intro to concept art and intro to 3D concept art. But they're online, cgspectrum.com.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming in. Thank you, Mike, again. We are Flower STEM, bridging STEM, creativity, all these fields. Next semester, keep your eye out because we'll have a lot more guest speakers and a lot more cool events. Enjoy your night, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.